Hello and welcome to my YouTube series, UFOs and Extraterrestrials. Before we get going, I would just like to take this opportunity to thank co.ag Music, who has produced a series of tracks for my Case File series and whose music is used in all of my videos. If you haven't already, go check out his channel, which is in the description below. Today, we will be looking at some of the close encounters of the second kind that define the genre. So sit back, relax, and let's begin. A close encounter of the second kind is more than just a mere UFO sighting. It is classified as an event where the unknown object leaves behind physical traces of its presence. This can include, but is not limited to, interference with electronic equipment, odd behaviour in animals, paralysis or physical discomfort, trace-like impressions in the ground, scorch marks, or even chemical traces. What makes this type of encounter so fascinating is that it proves the event was more than just a hallucination or misidentification by witnesses. These events are a key reference point for those who believe in the existence of extraterrestrials, as we can observe and analyse evidence long after the encounter with the craft. However, others view these events as make-believe, with the view that they are easy to hoax, which is fueled by the fact that people can profit from selling their stories. Skeptics also believe that these events are explainable by other means, such as military experiments, satellite malfunctions, or other miscellaneous aircraft and space debris. Regardless of your position, the cases I am about to discuss are some of the most compelling and intriguing examples I could find, and range from mass close encounters with UFOs to a report written by a sergeant and colonel of the United States Air Force regarding an encounter with a parked UFO in a forest. Whatever your position may be, these are some of the strongest examples of close encounters of the second kind. Nobody truly knows the answers to their mystery. Our first case is known as the Livingston Encounter. This case has just one witness, Robert Taylor, a forestry worker in Livingston, West Edinburgh, who was doing routine checks of the grounds with his dog, Lara, at around 10 AM on the 9th of November, 1979. Despite there being only one witness, it is a captivating event, as the police reports and witness testimonies that followed the encounter all support Robert's story. He was checking the fences and gates that stretched the perimeter of the forest, looking to see if any livestock from the neighbouring farmland had made their way through. Lara was an Irish settler and had run off into the woods. Robert assumed she was chasing squirrels or rabbits, but went looking for her to be sure. Suddenly, deeper in the forest, he came across a clearing, which is where he encountered a dark grey object, which was about 6 metres wide. At first, he did not know what to make of it. It was a round shape with a domed top with a narrow rim projecting from its base. Adjacent to the object were several poles topped with what looked like small propellers. As Robert looked closer, he became more confused and disorientated. There were dark intervals around the base of the object, with darker patches that were an unearthly black. Robert also noticed a distinct smell which he described as burnt rubber. Before he had time to process what was happening to him, 2 black spheres with what he described as long legs started rolling towards him. The orbs looked similar to underwater mines and rolled on the tips of their elongated limbs. Bewildered by what was happening to him, he froze for a moment too long, and the orbs grabbed him by the leg before he had the chance to run. They started dragging him towards the parked dome-like object. Robert resisted and flailed his arms to try and escape, but could not overcome the unknown objects. As he got closer to the dome, the stench of burning rubber intensified, so much so that he could hardly breathe. He still tried to fight the black spheres that were effortlessly pulling him along the ground. He started to become tired, at which point he began to lose consciousness. Robert woke up around 20 minutes later, lying face down in the ground. Lara was nervously pacing and whimpering nearby. The objects had completely disappeared, and, as he came to, he noticed that his clothes were torn where the strange black spheres had grabbed him. His chin was cut and bleeding, and his leg was bruised. He was weakened by the event and could not walk, so crawled back through the forest to his truck. He tried calling Lara, but was unable to make a sound, like something out of a bad dream. Eventually, he got back to his truck and tried to radio for help, but he still couldn't talk. He regained a bit of his strength and started up the engine with Lara in the back and drove home as his house was closer than the forestry base. When he entered through the door, his wife was confronted with a shocking sight, as Robert was in bad shape. After he gathered himself, he slowly became able to speak again and started to explain what had happened. His wife then phoned his boss, Malcolm Drummond, who then called the local doctor, Gordon Adams. With his employee tended to, Drummond assembled a team of workers and headed to the part of the forest where Robert was attacked. They were the first to arrive at the scene. Initially, they found no sign of the objects Robert encountered, but then, one of the workmen noticed strange marks in the grass. Drummond ordered his workers to leave the scene alone so they did not interfere with any evidence and called the police. Meanwhile, Graham Adams examined Robert's injuries and found nothing significant other than some lacerations on his leg. Robert was also complaining about a pounding headache, so Adams recommended an X-ray, but the local hospital was too busy at the time, and, after an hour or so, Robert's headache began to go away. The police used forensic tests to examine his torn clothes and also investigated the marks on the ground in the clearing where Robert was attacked. The tests found nothing out of the ordinary. However, the tears in his clothing appeared to have been caused by something with significant strength pulling on them. The officers who investigated the clearing, however, found evidence of something peculiar. There were two different sorts of impressions in the ground. The first consisted of two parallel tracks about 2.5 metres long and 30 centimetres wide. These were formed of crushed grass, which only some kind of heavy equipment or machine could produce. The second markings were in the form of two circular holes driven into the soil around the parallel tracks. They were around 10 centimetres in circumference and 15 centimetres deep. There were 40 of these circular holes in total, and each were driven in at an angle away from the tracks. After further inquiry, it was apparent that there had been no heavy machinery used in the area where Robert was attacked for months. Everything Robert had told his colleagues and police was supported by the evidence available. However, nobody knows what attacked Robert in the clearing at the Livingston Forest. This is an important case because it shows why close encounters of the second kind are so unique and harder to explain. If the UFO Robert had encountered left no markings or did not tear his clothes, many would struggle to believe him. What do you guys think? The second case that I will be looking at is the Levelland, Texas encounters. This case is a bit different as it includes numerous witnesses, all of whom had separate encounters with a single UFO that disrupted their car engines. It was a cold night on the 2nd of November 1957. At around 11 p.m, Officer A.J. Fowler received a call at the Levelland police station. On the other end of the line was Pedro Saucedo, who was notably distressed. He reported that his truck had malfunctioned after an encounter with a bright light in the sky, but after it left, the truck started up again. His call was vague, and Fowler was unable to get many details and suspected that Pedro was drink driving. He logged the call but took no further action. After a few days later, Pedro went into the station to give a clearer statement. He was en route 116 when he was confronted with the UFO heading straight towards him. It was an intense burning light. As it got closer, the engine started to choke, and then died unexpectedly, with the headlights blinking out shortly after. Pedro got a glimpse of the object, which he claimed was about 60 metres long. It appeared to have a pulse with yellow and white lights. It passed him without making a sound and headed east. As soon as it left, his truck came back to life. Fowler logged what Pedro told him and went back to work. Little did he know that he was in for a busy night. Over the duration of his shift, Fowler received around 7 other calls, all describing the exact same incident Pedro had reported previously. It appeared that Levelland was experiencing a close encounter of a second kind on a large scale. Fowler alerted all patrolling police vehicles to the reports. Officer Lee Hargrove and Floyd Gavin saw the UFO on that very night, but it was too fast for them to pursue it. Fire Marshal Ray Jones heard the police radio traffic and went out to join the chase. He also encountered the object, which made his engine splutter, though it did not stop. After the story was later reported in the local news, around 50 other residents reported seeing the object in the sky. What makes this close encounter so noteworthy is that it was experienced by numerous credible individuals, all of whom had separate, isolated interactions with the UFO, and nearly all of the reports were identical. What do you think was harassing the citizens of Levelland on that night? Was it some kind of experimental military craft, or something even more unbelievable? The final example I would consider is a famous close encounter of the second kind, which is one of the most convincing cases out there, the Rendlesham Farm incident, which some people call the Bentwaters incident. This was no ordinary case, as it was reported by numerous officials in the United States Air Force. In a best-selling book written by Leslie Kean titled UFOs, Generals, Pilots, and Government Officials Go on the Record, both Sergeant James Penningston and Colonel Charles Holt, who were by that time retired, wrote a chapter dedicated to this event approximately 30 years after its occurrence. The event is still recognised by the genre as one of the most defining encounters of our time, second only to Roswell in terms of name recognition. The events of this incident transpired at around 12 AM on Christmas Eve in 1980. The encounter took place between two US military bases in the United Kingdom, which were known as Bentwaters and Woodridge. In Leslie Kean's books, both Penningston and Holt write about the encounter as they experienced it on that cold winter's night. I really recommend that you read this chapter, as it provides a personal and chilling account of what happened. For the sake of clarity, however, I will provide a brief summary of the event. In the early hours of the morning, Sergeant James Penningston and his colleague John Burroughs had been ordered to investigate a suspected crash of a civilian aircraft which had landed in between the two NATO bases. When the two men arrived at the scene, they encountered a craft the likes of which they had never seen in their careers. It was a dome-like sphere with unknown hieroglyphic symbols on its hull. Penningston managed to draw some sketches of these symbols and the craft itself before it suddenly took off at an unnatural speed, which compelled him to write down in his notebook, "Speed impossible." A subsequent analysis of the landing site revealed indentations in the ground which formed a triangular shape, scorch marks on the trees adjacent to the site, and pockets of radiation which military scientists claimed were significantly higher than the average background. Alongside this, the UFO was also briefly tracked by military radar, but was lost after a rapid acceleration. 2 nights after this incident, the UFO reappeared at the landing site and began to shoot beams of light at the deputy commander and a small team of operatives who were still investigating the scene, and then subsequently went on to shoot more beams of light at significant and particularly sensitive parts of the Woodbridge base. With numerous officials claiming to have witnessed this event, alongside the commander of the base, Colonel Holt, being personally involved, this incident caused substantial government and media inquiry. The British Ministry of Defence received numerous requests to investigate the incident by both American intelligence services and parliamentary committees. Their cold analysis of the case, conducted decades later, revealed that there was no explanation for the event's occurrence, which was due, in part, to a lack of cooperation between US and UK authorities, as evidence was lost and information was not sufficiently distributed, as neither party wanted the responsibility of finding the answers to these blatant assaults on NATO operations. Alongside this, there was no explanation as to what the UFO could have been, and it is unlikely that we will ever know. This case really does make you think, and question your position on the existence of UFOs. Although it is by no means definite proof of the existence of UFOs, or where they come from and who pilots them, it is something we should all consider when asking these questions. What do you make of this case? Is it nothing more than a hoax, or did it actually happen? Let me know in the comments. Thank you for watching, please like and subscribe and stay tuned for the next video, which will be another installment in my case file series.